Welcome back to Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Last time we found out that there were many more dark secrets lurking behind this war, and we found out why Mist had the medallion and the real reason why Ike's parents were running. But this time, it's time to leave Dayan and head out to Crimea. Meanwhile, we have another scene with Zelgius here. So he's regulated to rearguard duty. That was a very short segment before the map. The information gathered at Palmeni Temple leads Ike ever closer to the hidden truths behind the war. The assassination of Bednion's former apostle led to the massacre of Serenes. A Serenes princess was kidnapped. The medallion is stolen. A complex scheme seems to connect these events, and now those threads have become clearer and clearer. Ashnard's motives are still a mystery, but his silhouette lurks in the shadows of all that happens. Ike returns from the temple, and renounces all rights to the rule of Dayan. Those rights are then passed through General Zelgius of Bednion to the Apostle herself. The Crimean army absorbed another troop from Bednion, and with its might increased, marches on the Dayan-Crimea border. Its next goal is the Riven Bridge, a massive structure that connects the two countries. It's also called Oribus Bridge in Radiant Dawn, because that was its Japanese name, and they forgot they changed its name here. One of the few inconsistencies that didn't get corrected in the PAL version because it was said in spoken dialogue, so there's no way they could re-recorded that. Now, this chapter's base is going to be very interesting for a few reasons. First, we have some reminiscing with Alincia here. Alincia's going to be back in her homeland. Yeah, she did spend most of her life in isolation. She hasn't really been around much of Crimea. Now, we've never been to the north of Crimea before, so this is going to be new territory for most of us. And here we have a bit of a time frame thing. This actually leads to some interesting implications for the ages in Radiant Dawn, because Radiant Dawn is officially 3 years after Path of Radiance, and yet this line means that 1 year passed over the course of Path of Radiance, so really everyone in Radiant Dawn should be 4 years older, not 3 years older. But official sources still list them as only being 3 years older. Then again, a lot of the ages listed in the Radiant Dawn art book were actually flat out wrong compared to the Path of Radiance one, so when I get to that, I might just have to calculate them myself. But yeah, it's really 4 years between the games when you think about it. Well, just as long as you don't demonize a certain character we'll be meeting later, for shipping-related reasons, which used to happen quite a lot. I'm actually pretty annoyed at that. We haven't seen Ranulph in a really long time. As I said, he's much more important in Radiant Dawn. In this game, he's only really there for the beginning and the end. Also, that line is great. I'd curtsy, but the tail makes it look silly. So, Bednion and Gallia. We've also got Phoenicis, so we've got a lot of allies now. And it looks like they're avoiding that thing that Soren was talking about earlier. Well, he's been spending a lot of time around Soren. I can Ranulph have some pretty funny interactions in Radiant Dawn as well. Yeah, first we have to take back Crimea. And speaking of Ike Staff Officer, here he is. Stefan got MVP, that was pretty much to be expected, and a decent amount of bonus experience there too. I'll have to use it for one level up on Gatry though. And it's actually at this point that I'm starting to consider whether or not to dump a lot of it on Marsha right now, because I do really need... yeah, that's the thing. I do really need to get her promoted if I want to show a base conversation, but that's going to actually cost me a lot of bonus experience, and I might need this bonus experience later. So that whole priest pushing thing, I believe the priest survival is the last time we have a bonus experience objective that's not just turns. Every chapter from here on, it's purely turn count that determines bonus experience, so that was the only optional objective for that. So we might never have this opportunity again, but I'm gonna need to use quite a bit of it to get her, might as well. Since these little ups don't really matter as I'm not actually using her, I'm just gonna skip ahead to when she's level 10, and that was a pretty terrible one. I've never actually seen that before. It's knights during the promotion animation if you promote someone in this chapter. The chapter itself doesn't take place at night, so that's actually a nice touch. Oh, you know what? I should have tried to promote someone in Day and Keep. Although I probably would have got the same background that shows up during that chapter, but still. Anyway, back to the actual bonus experience that I care about. Might as well do this. Sort of want everyone to be around 11 at this point. I just had to make sure that we're on track to... Okay, your speed is now below average. We're on track to getting everyone to level 20 by the end of the game. We should be hitting 20 during the final chapter if I do everything right. I think that's the first time I've got one of those this playthrough. That was kind of unlucky, but at least one more level towards transfer bonuses. Alright, and I need to do this, even though it's going to cost me a lot, because Gatry didn't participate in the last chapter at all. Going to be using him a lot more here, though, hopefully. And that's cap strength, nice. I don't know why they couldn't make the strength cap for Generals 30, though. At least it means one less point to cap it and get transfer bonuses. Might as well level up Soren. That was pretty amazing. Not quite capped in anything yet, but you're getting very close and you've still got a lot of levels to go. And slow Ike. Okay, there we go. His speed should still be so much higher right now, but anyway. And I'm going to be doing shopping and outfitting first. Ah, finally we can buy silver weapons. Nice. Definitely want a few of these. They're expensive, but it's not like we've got more than enough money at this point. In fact, let me check the forge quickly. We can forge silver weapons now. But only for swords and lances at this point. Not axes. Though forged steel axes are pretty much the best thing you can do at this point in the game. Forged silver sword might not be bad, but maybe I should forge a silver lance. Because Nephene's about to run out of Kicks McGee, though I kind of like to hoard forged silver weapons for the trial maps. They're pretty useful there. Let's buy a few of these. Now, I believe that on the lower difficulties, you can buy silver weapons much, much earlier in the game, so them being available here for the first time is a hard mode thing. I might as well try forging something, because, you know, you can only forge one weapon per chapter, might as well make the most of it. The Laguz Lance might actually not be a bad idea here, but for now, I might need a Night Killer more. Gatri already has a Silver Lance. Oh, you still only have C in Lances, so yeah, nothing close to using a Silver Lance. I want to keep Meteor for now. Alright, and that Silver Bow, which I pretty much just need to sell because can't really use it. You know what? Since I'm not actually using any archers, I might as well sell most of these. That's actually pretty valuable too. I would normally not do this, but because I'm not using any bow users. And I might as well sell these too. And now, although I haven't forged a javelin yet, go up to 11 might and then as compared to spears, 12. Yeah, forged silver lances are pretty strong though. Somewhat expensive. Not all that expensive, really. And I might as well just, because this is the first time we can forge silver weapons, so might as well make the most of it. And I was trying to think of something to reference with this, and then I was thinking, okay, something southern, and then I thought, okay, yeah, I can actually do this, hopefully. I don't think I can fit the whole thing, though. And I'm pretty sure I've done this before in another file, but, something southern. Also, forged silver weapons do look pretty cool with color changes sometimes. Probably go with that. So what I'm actually referencing there is there was a fanfic once that, it's a pretty funny, deliberate parody fanfic that, it parodied the fact that a lot of people can't write for a certain character's southern accent very well, so it had this character, the whole concept was there was some Mary Sues infiltrating the universe and they were derailing canon around them, and while they were around the one character with the southern accent, their accent gradually devolved until it eventually just became blah 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 something southern all the time, which I found hilarious, but anyway. So yeah, now you know the origins of that, and that... Okay, I think I might need to swap some other weapons around, which... We can finally take some silver swords. So something that was also pointed out to me is that a lot of people like to use Rayson as a walking inventory because he has no use for his weapon inventory slots at all, so you can just load him up with some items that you feel like you might need eventually in the chapter, and just, like some staves or things like that, and just have him as like a walking secondary convoy. Which I guess is a pretty interesting use of Rayson's inventory, because yeah, like I said, there's absolutely no use for his weapon inventory space, since he can't use weapons. And now, we have a fairly interesting support that we can do. We also have another interesting support we can do, and it worked out so well. Getting Stefan and Mordecai B at the exact same time as Icon Soren A is actually great, because they both deal with one specific issue, so I think I'll actually go for Stefan and Mordecai B first, because it alludes to this, but it doesn't directly explain what it is. Also, you might remember last time, Stefan said he detested Bednion, and he called Mordecai ignorant. And now Mordecai's learned what those words mean, and he's not happy. So that doesn't explain exactly what a branded is, but remember that Stefan said to Soren back in their C support that he's one of you. So, we're about to find out something particularly important about Soren here. I actually think that it's very deliberate that this is the... Because I've been deploying Soren in every chapter I can deploy him in, and I think it's very deliberate that this is the earliest opportunity you have to get Icon Soren's A, because it explains something that might be kind of relevant to this chapter. So Soren is one of them too. But unlike that conversation we had before, this time it's actually going to explain what branded are. Some people suspected Soren was Laguz. He's actually not. He's only part Laguz. But this plot point is pretty important to bring up. There's actually a second layer of prejudice in this world, other than the obvious one. There's the Bjork and Laguz conflict, but there's also the fact that hybrids between the two races are not accepted by either. And some people in the comments have actually already realized that Soren's mark was probably significant. Also, Spirit Charmers are kind of an interesting plot point that's, it's kind of interesting because they make a big deal about explaining this concept, and you'd think it would be more important to the plot than it actually is. Really, the only significant thing about Spirit Charmers existing is the fact they're easily mistaken for branded and vice versa. And yeah, here's one of the most heartwarming conversations in the game. Not everyone is gonna turn on you, Soren. The thing is, though, considering what his life has been like, which, by the way, he still hasn't gone on into exactly what went on before Ike found him, but pretty much everyone. There are certain support conversations that explain exactly how Lagoos treat the Branded. Basically, while Bjork just completely hate them, with Lagoos it's different, and some of the Branded consider the treatment even worse. Lagoos just pretend they don't exist. And what's even worse, I believe Stefan talks about this in some of his support conversations, but unlike with Bjork, where as long as you hide your brand, you're safe, Lagoos can tell. They can sense Branded, and there's no way to hide from them. So that explains why Soren, well, doesn't really explain it because it was still really stupid and really just an awful thing to do, but we at least get some insight into why Soren was that way towards Leth and Mordecai when he first met them, because he's used to being treated very badly by Lagoos, and most Branded are. Anyway, the end of this conversation. There are some people who think this line was mistranslated and is actually a plot hole, because it's a plot point that Ike was the one who found Soren, Grail wasn't involved at all, but I don't think that's what this line is implying. I think this line is more saying, you and your father helped, but for separate things. Ike was still the one who found Soren, but Grail still took Soren in and let him be part of the mercenaries. I think that's what Soren's implying here, so I don't really think this is a plot hole or anything like that. And obligatory mention of the fact that some people think this line was toned down in the English version a bit. That in the Japanese version he said something more along the lines of "you're special to me," which was a little more ambiguous in the implications. I feel like you can interpret that however you want, really. So, that is all of the Ike and Soren backstory we'll be getting in Path of Radiance. Well, specifically the Soren backstory. There's actually a lot more Soren backstory, so we don't know exactly what kind of Lagoos blood he has, we don't know who his parents actually were. All of that gets revealed in Radiant Dawn, and that's one thing that annoys me. There's so much that I can talk about Soren, and I can't say it, because the biggest reveal about Soren's backstory, we have to wait until literally the last lines before the credits in Radiant Dawn. So, yeah, and like I said, that's the biggest thing about Soren's backstory. So getting Ike and Soren to an A in this game, the reason I did it is because, well, one, it explains the whole Branded thing, and two, it actually unlocks some extra dialogue in Radiant Dawn if you transfer a file forward, and since I was going to do this file as a transfer file anyway, I thought I might as well. In order to see the full extent of Soren's backstory, you need to get Ike and Soren to an A support in both games. You also need to fulfill some really god-dang-it conditions to unlock a secret epilogue scene that also further explains more of his backstory. So, yeah, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of a shame that Soren's backstory is pretty much open knowledge at this point, because he almost reminds me a little bit of Renault in Fire Emblem 7, how they have this backstory that's told gradually throughout 2 games, and you need to do a lot of very specific actions to see it all. And actually getting to see it all is a big accomplishment, and yeah, like I said, it's ruined a little bit by the fact that everyone knows now. But anyway, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and do this conversation, because I feel like it makes more sense to do this after Ike and Soren's A. Because they just showed how much they trust each other, so cutting from that straight to this makes a lot of sense. I think we know who that is. She's back! Something tells me this isn't gonna go well. I will admit a lot of Ivy's conversations are pretty funny. Well, Soren studies a lot of magic, of course he'd probably understand. And if you play other Fire Emblem games, you'll know what this staff is. There aren't that many items in this game that I feel are really worth repairing, except maybe some forge weapons. I don't find myself using Hammerin in this game very much because it doesn't really have much in the way of legendary weapons, and it only has 3 uses. Like I said, forge weapons are probably the main use of this. Soren, you do realize what you're doing here. Soren, stop. You're just dooming him even more. Yep, that's it. Ike is officially doomed. Even more so because, when someone in one of these games says cooking is not something they're skilled at, Ike is gonna die, isn't he? We're gonna get a game over because Ike ate your cooking and died. And... Great, into that conversation. So, the Hammerin staff. Only C ranked, which means most staff users at this point should be able to use it. Oh, and there's also this conversation. So, this one. This might be another one of the reasons why this game got a T rating. So, pretty heavily implied Shinnon was completely drunk off his ass in that conversation. That happened. Pretty much self-explanatory. And I think we should move out here, because we've spent way too much time in the base in this chapter. You again. Thankfully, though, this will be the last time. We finally get to fight you. As for the work on the bridge, that's the gimmick of this chapter. I'll be talking about it once we get into this. Well, given how well every other trap they've thrown at us fared, I don't think this is going to end very well for them. It's been a while since we've seen this background. Oh, right, that. Well, long story. And this is another thing Soren figured out ages ago that he didn't tell us. So... double agents. Maybe Nasir was competing with Nasala for World's Greatest Backstabber Award. Ranulph knows something, but we're not going to find out just yet. You might be able to shed some light on Nasir's motives, though. And here we are at the bridge. I've always liked the way this chapter looked. It was kind of an interesting concept. Even though it is basically just a straight line to the end. And Har is back. And he's still acting like he usually does. Those might be your famous last words. We do have a lot of enemies that we need to fight our way through, though. And once again, Riven Bridge, aka the Oribus Bridge, if you go by its Radiant Dawn name. Don't know why they forgot they changed it, but anyway. And we actually have a new recruit here. Finally, Ranulph is joining us. This is what I said earlier when I was talking about us getting a better cat soon. So, since this is technically when he joins, I can show Ranulph now. These are his starting stats normally. In fact, let me just show something. I like to often swap the Demi-Band over to him just to show what he's like transformed. These are what his stats look like transformed. Ranulph's joining has been a long time coming, but after all that build up, do his stats hold up? Actually, they pretty much do. I said back in Leth's bio that by the time she starts getting less useful, we'll get another cat to pick up the slack. That's Ranulph. At this point, unless you've been training Leth a lot, Ranulph will pretty much replace her. His base stats are solid for this point in the game, and he can hold his own against most enemies, with or without a Demi-Band. He does average a little better than Leth as well, so he's not a bad choice to take all the way to the end. He also supports with Ike, so he can benefit from that nice Earth Affinity evasion rate, though this requires you to save some supports on Ike until now, which is pretty late into the game. Overall, Ranulph is a pretty good choice for a Laguz character at this point. With that, I'll see you for the preparations.